MMA Roadshow, episode number 185. My name is John Morgan. Cold Coffee is not with me, but that doesn't mean you won't be hearing from him. We'll check in with Cold Coffee later on. He is traveling all around the Northeast. Bellator's got these back-to-back shows in Connecticut and Long Island, and there was some media in Manhattan as well. So Cold Coffee's up there with Mike Bohn and Dave Mandel as well, the longtime Sherdog photographer that is kind of doing some more freelance gigs these days. He's up there working for us as well. So an old school veteran of the game, Dave Mandel, helping us out. So those two guys are handling the back-to-back Bellator shows. I am back home in Las Vegas, coming to you from my office. Not a particularly sexy location this evening, but hey, when you're sitting by yourself talking, it's bad enough. And if you want to go into a restaurant or get a bar or something along those lines and then throw on your headphones and talk to yourself, people judge you. I'm just going to say, people judge. Now, I know what you're thinking. John Morgan, where in the hell was 184 and a half? How the hell do you not do a post-fight show for UFC 229? And you know what? You are right. Man, I cannot tell you how ready I was to talk about UFC 229. Had all my gear with me, had everything ready to do it, but unfortunately, we just ran out of time. Myself and Cold Coffee were working until about 6 o'clock in the morning. You can imagine what happened after the skirmish. Everything changed. The big bosses at USA Today, of course, they were paying attention as well. They wanted some content. They wanted some different things done. So we ended up working pretty damn late that night, and unfortunately just ran out of time. At some point, sleep sleep is needed. That was a long week. So crashed about 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I actually thought about getting together with Cold Coffee in the afternoon and saying, man, why don't we just do a little post-fight recap in the afternoon, and maybe be a little late to the party, but at least we get it out there. But I got to be honest, my wife and son were looking at me and kind of expecting me to be a father and and a husband, wonder where the hell I'd been all week. And so to be honest with you, I felt kind of guilty. I thought, well, I guess I better work on this marriage and work on being a father to my son. So the and a half didn't happen, unfortunately. But I don't know. We got to work on that. I got to talk with the bosses at MMA Junkie. Maybe we can get this bad boy as part of the official MMA Junkie offerings instead of a little side project, so that we can schedule out some time to do it. We got to fix something, right? We got to be able to get to that post-fight content. It was a crazy night. Listen, I know it's not over yet. Sometimes I hate looking too far back because things move on, stories move forward, and there are things to talk about this week as well. But this stuff is still going on with Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor. Of course, we know that the Nevada State Athletic Commission meets on October the 24th. That was their regularly scheduled meeting. So that's when this will all be handled. Just for those of you who are wondering, it'll be at 9 a.m. Eastern time here in Las Vegas. Myself and Cold Coffee will be there for that. That's when we'll hear what happens. That's when all these issues will be dealt with, and I would imagine they would figure something out at that point. And we're not going to get any resolution until then. There's a temporary suspension right now. That's really just an administrative thing. If you've heard about this 10-day suspension that both Khabib and Conor are under right now, that's really just an administrative thing. Basically, make sure that nothing, they don't book anything, and which they wouldn't be anyway. But just gives a chance to put them on the calendar and say, hey, we got to do it. But everything will happen in a public hearing. We'll certainly stream it. I know there was a time that Fight Pass would stream big commission meetings as well. I don't know that they'd really want to do that. And it's also expensive to do that. It costs labor and those sort of things to go do that. I don't know if they will or not. I kind of just crossed my mind, to be honest with you, as I was thinking about it. But at the very least, MMA Junkie will have you covered. And that's when we'll find out what's going to happen. I can't imagine a real lengthy suspension for either guy. Khabib, certainly the aggressor in this situation. And we've been talking about all week. Did a lot more MMA Junkie radio this week. Trying to spend more time there when I'm in town with those boys and get to talk a little bit more MMA. But, we talked about in the immediate aftermath as well. I mean, Khabib Nurmagomedov was definitely wrong in what he did. There's no question about it. You cannot justify anything, leaping over the fence and attacking anybody. There's just no way for you to say that that's okay. But at the same time, I understand where he's coming from. I mean, the guy had been, the target of mocking and some personal insults. And I guess that's part of the game, but it did get a little personal at time, talking about countries and religions and all those things. So, I think he snapped at that moment, and it's a shame because, for this past week, that's all anybody's really talking about instead of the performance that Habib had, and I find that to be sad. I think this was a phenomenal performance. I mean, dominating performance. Yes, Conor McGregor did win the third round, but I didn't feel like Habib was ever really in trouble. He did take a few big shots and didn't seem to bother him. Of course, the grappling game was on point as you would expect it to be, and really just a thoroughly dominating win. But unfortunately, he lost control of himself, and it's interesting because I've been checking the pay-per-view. I bought it digitally, and normally they eventually add in the alternate camera angles and alternate audios and all that stuff so you can check it out. And I haven't seen those added to UFC yet. I've been checking on it because I'm interested too. There's a big case to be made. Habib went after Dylan Dennis, but was Dylan Dennis really saying anything? I mean, did he say something out of the ordinary? I think, John Kavanaugh took to Twitter to kind of defend his guy a little bit and say, how could anybody possibly have heard what was going on in there? It was so loud. And, sometimes acoustics are a little bit different depending on where you're standing. But, I kind of agree. So, was it premeditated? Was this something that he was planning on doing anyway? That was one of the things I wanted to ask him at the post-fight press conference. Of course, he basically answered one question and then left. So, we never really got to ask. It was kind of premeditated. Maybe he wouldn't have even answered it anyway. You know what I'm saying? I guess that would kind of be admitting that you were planning on doing something wrong. So maybe he wouldn't have said anything anyway. But I don't know. Not to justify, because I think Dylan had said some things in social media, and again, there were some personal things said that maybe went too far. But Habib messed up here. But he's a man. I can understand why he snapped. So I certainly don't judge him for it. I think it's out of character for him. But I think it's unfortunate because I think this would have been kind of a star-building performance. Instead, it's controversy. But controversy does sell. The other thing I think it did is I think it got Conor McGregor a rematch. Now, I don't know if that fight will happen right away. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Certainly part of that's going to depend on what happens with Habib in front of the commission. But I do believe that there will be a rematch now because there's so much interest. There's so much discussion over this. And I think had Conor lost the way he did and then Habib had just kept his cool, I don't think people would be calling for that fight again. Habib could say, "Hey man, I told you guys what I was gonna do. I showed all along that this guy was never the guy," and I don't think people would demand a rematch. But now I think people are gonna want to see it, which is a shame, especially for Tony Ferguson, because I think you got to get Tony Ferguson in there. You got to get Tony Ferguson in for a title fight somehow, some way. I know that we have issues getting that fight together with Tony Ferguson and Habib, but you got to do it. So we'll see what happens with this. I'm guessing 6 months. I mean, sometimes it sucks because there's not really, rules in place, so to speak, where you just know exactly what's going on. And that's something that I think, I wish we had more consistency with. And that, of course, that goes with USADA and all that. I mean, I don't know, just I understand that you have to judge things on a case-by-case basis, and you have to take into account everything that's happening and all that. I get all that. I do. But, I wish there were some guidelines, and instead I think, it's just going to be up to the commission to kind of basically make things up as they go along. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think a stern financial penalty is in order. I think it has to be understood that this is unacceptable. I mean, it didn't end up being that bad. It really didn't. I mean, in retrospect, it felt awful on Saturday night. But luckily, nobody was hurt. Luckily, it didn't spill over into the crowd. I mean, gosh, some of those scenes that we saw, guy getting laid out in the walkway area out there of the arena out in front of the food court area. I mean, that was unfortunate, man. That was awful to see. Now, the guy kind of had it coming, it looked like. He was taunting and then got lit up, but I'm just glad we didn't see scenes like that, on the arena floor, or, people getting toppled over. It could have been way worse. But between Las Vegas Metro, T-Mobile security, the Nevada State Athletic Commission inspectors, they kind of all corralled things pretty quickly. So it ended up really not being that bad. But not being that bad doesn't justify what was done. It's not right to leap the cage and go after somebody in the corner. So I think Khabib is going to have to face some real stern punishment for this. But if you took 20% of his purse, that $2 million purse, that could be big. I mean, that's a lot of money. Now, I think he made way more than that $2 million. I'm sure he got a big cut of the pay-per-view as well. So I'm sure there was a lot more money on the backside that's not being touched, but that's still a stiff penalty. And like I said, maybe 6 months. I mean, 6 months would at least be doing something. It wouldn't really prevent a fight from happening. I mean, was he going to fight in 6 months anyway? Probably not. Probably not. But at least it shows that you're doing something. So, and listen, I mean, Conor is probably going to face some repercussions too. I've seen a lot of people throwing out there that, Conor threw the first punch and this and that. And yeah, I've seen all the video at this point. We didn't know much when we were sitting at the press conference. We were just kind of starting to see things as we were there at the press conference on Saturday night. And I see a lot of people, say, well, Conor threw the first punch. Listen, I'm not trying to defend Conor. I mean, I mean, he is a superstar and all that, but, I picked Khabib going into this fight, so it's not like I'm just, riding Conor's side or whatever. But I will say, as appalled as what I thought he did back in April really was, I mean, that was shocking, and that was awful. I don't really fault him for swinging at anybody that's coming into the cage. I mean, at that point, if you're approaching the fighting surface and you're not contracted to fight, I don't think people have a right to judge what happens at that point. I mean, at that point, you're the guy that's out of place, and if a combatant starts swinging on you, I don't know, man. I think at that point, they've got to feel like self-preservation is important as well. So I think Conor will probably face some issue there for the fact that he crawled up on the fence, the fact that he did throw a punch. But in much the same way that I don't judge Khabib because I think he made a mistake here, but I don't think this is indicative of his character. With Conor, I can't really fault him here, man. I mean, there's people leaping into the cage. You got to defend yourself. I mean, he did get clocked a couple times, so maybe he was right to be swinging. So again, it's wrong. It's not justified, but I understand his need for self-preservation as well. So I think penalties for both, and I think they're gonna fight again, man. I think they're just so much money. We're hearing about 2.5 million pay-per-view buys, which blows the previous record of 1.6 million away. I mean, that's incredible. You're talking a 50% increase in the record. I mean, that's phenomenal. 50%. And we didn't get to talk about it, but I actually had heard previously that the commercial sales, meaning like the bars and restaurants that were buying it, was off the charts. It was a record there too. So you start adding up the money. Don't forget to add up the money that comes from the commercial buys as well. And I heard that was phenomenal also. So I just think there's too much money. Now, all that being said, this battle between Khabib and the UFC is going to be pretty interesting too. So we've got to look at October 24th. But then we've got to pay attention to what goes on with Zubaira Tukhugov as well, right? I guess it's more or less official that the fight with Artem Lobov is off. Zubaira has been removed from the fight. They're trying to find a replacement for Artem Lobov. I will say this. I kind of support pulling Zubaira from the fight. I do. And I think even, Khabib, who made a statement and said, listen, if you punish my guy and you get rid of him, you might as well get rid of me too because I'm out. I believe Khabib when he says that. I do not believe that is just kind of posturing on his part. I do not believe he is faking that position. I believe he will stand up for what he believes in. Twofold. Number one, he's a man of principle. Okay? I mean, it's important. His principles are important to him. He'll do that. But secondly, he knows he can go fight in Russia. A Russian promotion would pick him up in a heartbeat. He's a star over there. They could promote his fights. And, trying to sue and keep any kind of contract law in place in a Russian court for a Russian fighter with an American company, good luck with all that. Good luck with all that. I mean, that's what Vitaly Minakov did, right? I mean, he left Bellator while he was under contract for Bellator and just said, I don't care. I'm going to Russia. And he fought in Russia. And eventually Bellator just said, to hell with it. Like, just go. And then he signed with the UFC. So, that's something that you're going to have to be aware of, that you want to pay attention to. Now, I support Zubaira being pulled from this fight. What he did was wrong. He did take swings. Islam Makhachev was involved, but I think if you watch the tape, I don't believe Islam ever actually threw any punches at anybody. Zubaira did, and then not only that, he took to social media and bragged about the fact that, hey, I told you I was going to do it, and I did it. That definitely deserves some repercussions. And the other thing too is, it just seems like such an intense rivalry right now. So to put those two teams back together again in Moncton, I don't know that that's especially wise anyway. So for everything that surrounds it, I understand pulling Zubaira from the fight. Now, here's where it gets interesting is, Dana White on the night of the fight said that, anybody that was involved that leapt over the cage would not fight here. I honestly believe, and it's just a hunch, I haven't confirmed it with him, but I honestly believe in the way he answered the question that he didn't realize those were guys that were on the roster. Again, it's just a hunch. I don't have any educated opinion on that or any inside knowledge I'm not telling you about, but just in the way he answered the question, obviously I've, talked to Dana hundreds and hundreds of times over the years and seen him speaking hundreds and hundreds of times. I kind of feel like he didn't know that those guys were on the roster. So I'm not holding him at his word that he meant that was a lifetime ban. Now, it's easier to ban somebody for life if they're not in your promotion than it is if they're already there, right? I mean, if they're not in your promotion, you're just saying, well, we'd never sign them, and then you never do. I don't know that he meant that it was a lifetime ban for two guys that were on his roster, or at least one in Zubaira. Now, he's going to have to address that. And, Khabib is kind of drawing the line in the sand and saying, I'll force your hand at this. I will force your hand at this. And, man, it's going to be an interesting position. I don't think Dana wants to back down and say, the fighters are running what we do here, but he's going to have to address this in some way. And Zubaira deserves to be disciplined. He deserves to be disciplined. I mean, same thing. If you want to suspend him for 6 months, you're costing him this fight, basically. I think you're justified, right? I mean, this is unacceptable behavior. But I don't know that, it means he's never in there again. We got to see what happens. That's one that you're going to keep following. I tend to think maybe the UFC will back down a little bit. They'll say, well, we reviewed what happened. We watched the tape. We this was a special situation. It was such an inflamed debate. I mean, there's a way out of this. If you word it correctly, there's a way out of this, and there's a way for Dana to backtrack and not make it seem as if, he's just answering to Khabib's will. So I'm anxious to see how that all plays out. Now, the other thing about this that kind of sucked about the whole incident is that's all we got to talk about all week long is this fight between Khabib and Conor, the fight after the fight. I think people are sneaking in a little bit of discussion about how great Tony Ferguson looked, and he did. I mean, he looked fantastic. He's back. Anxious to see him. Dominic Reyes, a good performance. Almost finished Vince St. Preux in the first round, ended up kind of cruising to a decision. As he said afterwards, not a gas tank issue. He just kind of settled in. He realized he wasn't going to be able to get out of there quick, so he had to kind of settle in for the long haul. Derek Lewis picking up the big win over Alexander Volkov, the come-from-behind win. And now Derek Lewis in a title fight. And I am so torn on this fight between Derek Lewis and Daniel Cormier. Torn because I'm happy for the guys. I'm happy for both of them. We know DC only has, a couple months left basically in his career. If he sticks to his schedule, he wants to be done when he turns 40 in March. And so I'm happy for him to get another payday. Because, I mean, DC, one of the all-time greats, one of the all-time nice guys, deserves to cash in before he's done. Meanwhile, Derek Lewis, come on, the Roadshow loves Derek Lewis. The Black Beast has always been a favorite, man. And how can you not be happy for him getting a title fight? He said all along it's not really about the title for him, but it's about supporting his family. And when you get a title fight, those checks are bigger too, man. So it helps him support his family. So I'm down for it. And listen, I mean, I think Daniel Cormier wins that fight. No disrespect to Derek Lewis. I think Daniel Cormier wins that fight. But that said, if Derek Lewis hits you, as Alexander Volkov found out, you will go to sleep. And he can hit you at any point. He's going to have minutes at a time where it looks as if he's not capable of doing anything. But then he'll load up on those big shots, and if he hits you, you're going down. So Daniel Cormier will have to be careful about that. The build-up's going to be funny, I'm sure. They're gonna be entertaining. I mean, both those guys are outspoken and fun, and they're great on social media. So I'm happy. Here's the other thing that concerns me, though, is number one, Derek Lewis was wobbled quite a few times against Alexander Volkov. Now, he showed incredible heart. Never went down, but there were a couple times he was stunned. And, brain health, man. Brain health. I'm shocked that we're rushing him back in there in 30 days. And the other thing, too, that was kind of weird, Nevada State Athletic Commission had him suspended 30 days, and then they peeled a week off of that after the initial report. I got to believe that was done because the UFC asked them to. Asked them to change the suspension terms so they could get it cleared so that he could fight in New York. And, I mean, listen, if he passes the medical test, he passes the medical test. But, you just worry about this stuff. This sport is already dangerous enough, man. It's already hard enough for these guys. That to complicate it concerns me a little bit. So it's weird because I'm happy for these guys, and of course I'm going to watch the fight, man. And I'm glad they're cashing these paychecks, and couldn't happen to two better guys. But the circumstances surrounding it, especially with Derek Lewis, I don't know, concerns me a little bit. I don't know, just the well-being of the guys concern me. So. Michelle Watterson beat Felice Herrig via unanimous decision. Michelle Watterson looked really good here. Formiga beat Pettis. Of course, Sergio Pettis now moving up to bantamweight. Vicente Luque, devastating knockout of Jalen Turner, man. Scary for a minute. Jalen was out of it, man. He was out flat, and then when he came to, man, his eyes were kind of rolling around a little bit. He didn't know where he was. It was a scary moment, but fortunately, he came to really quick, left under his own power, looked fine as he walked by press row, but it was scary for a bit. Aspen Ladd beat Tanya Evinger. Aspen Ladd looked phenomenal. Of course, tough weight cut. If you didn't read the article that we wrote surrounding it, I talked to her team as well. She had that very emotional weight cut where she was kind of shaking and couldn't get back on the scale. And her team wasn't sure she was going to make weight, man. They were checking their weight on, and that's why there was such emotion. They were checking their weight on a couple different scales, and they were getting different results. So when they sent her out there to go weigh in, they weren't sure if she was going to make weight or not. I mean, they were prepared to miss, and that's why another reason there was so much emotion in there. So Aspen's got to get that weight stuff worked out, man. It would have been catastrophic for her had she missed it, man. I think it would have been devastating for her career, but she did make weight. And she looks like a force to be reckoned with, man. She just ran through Tanya Evinger. Scott Holtzman picked up the devastating win over Alan Patrick as well. Yana Kunigsiya with the decision of Alina Landsberg. Nick Lentz and Tony Martin both started the night off with devastating knockouts as well. Ryan LaFleur actually retired afterwards, so he announced that earlier this week. So my apologies that we did not have a UFC 229 post-fight show. We didn't get that and a half action. But hopefully you understand. It's funny, actually, my wife and kid were watching the fights. And I had kind of an old person moment where I was like, oh, my God, I can't believe my kid's watching this. When the post-fight brawl happened, I'm like, oh, my God, Morgan, that sounds so old. What the hell is wrong with you, man? It's part of it. But it was funny because I got a text from my wife that just said, sorry, baby, I know this means so much more work for you. So that was pretty good. She's watching it and she sees the brawl break out and she understands this game enough to know that, what just happened to you? What happened is you just got a ton more work. So, and she was right. She was right. So my humble apologies that we didn't get an and a half. We got to talk to the man running things at MMA Junkie, Simon Samano. Maybe we'll get him to start allowing us some time to do the podcast and bring it more consistently on the post show. I've thought about doing Sundays as well and just not even doing the Thursday show, but I don't know. I feel like the post fight is kind of more important, but I like doing the pre-fight stuff too. I like kind of setting up the week and letting everybody know what's happening and how it feels on the ground. So we'll see. All right, listen. After UFC 229, the rest of this week has been just kind of winding down. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about the damn thing all week long. Um, just different. I've been doing more radio appearances, just like we did before, and I did some afterwards as well. Everybody's talking about it. MMA Junkie Radio, everybody wants to talk about it. But I did get to break away and look to the future a little bit. I got a chance to talk to Max Holloway. Of course, Max Holloway is headlining UFC 231 on December 8th in Toronto against Brian Ortega. God, there's another fight that, we were already looking forward to that. You know how fired up everybody was that earlier this year, but another fight where I'm just so torn on, man. Like, I love both those guys, man. I love their styles. I love them as people. I'm gonna be torn on that one, man. It's one of those ones you don't want anybody to lose, So anxious for that fight. But Max Holloway was doing an on sale. He was in Toronto doing some on sale press conferences or media hits. At least I don't think they actually did a press conference thing. They just did a media tour. And fortunately, I was able to get a hold of him on the phone and catch up with Max Holloway. I did write an article about it, so if you want to read the piece that I wrote about it, that is on MMA Junkie as well. But I figured, hey, Roadshow listeners might want to just hear the interview, hear from Max Holloway himself. So that's what we'll do right now. We'll turn it over. This is a conversation for earlier this week. Myself and blessed Max Holloway.
How you doing, Max? Good to hear from you, brother.
Yeah, good hearing from you. I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Let's just get into it, man. I know you're busy, so I won't take too much of your time, man. But you just give us the report physically, man. How are you doing? I mean, did we ever find out what was going on? It seemed like a lot of questions and not a lot of answers.
Yeah, at the end of the day, people keep saying this and that. I feel great, Everybody know I get in early. I got in like 8 to 10 days before the fight. I was eating 2,500 calories, drinking water like a normal dude. Everybody keeps saying it was a weight cut issue. Everybody keeps saying it was a concussion issue. They knocked that off the list. So they ain't got no smoking gun, but we're still working closely with the UFC doctors, the specialists that the UFC doctors sent me to, but as of right now, they had me on a plan before we even could take this fight with how I could train. There's monitoring me. I was coming in and no signs of symptoms. So I feel great. I just can't wait till December comes around and I get to remind everybody who the undisputed champ is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So you feel good now, but I mean, really, Max, we just we don't know what happened. I mean, you have no idea. Is that basically what it got left at?
Yeah, they don't got no smoking gun. That's pretty much it. They I'm just glad that they crossed out the big things. The big things that they thought it wasn't. So I'm happy for that. But on the opposite side of that, like you said, they don't got an answer. So as long as the symptoms stay away, I'm good. I feel great. I can't wait. The symptoms never ever came back ever since. We've been getting after it in training too, so I feel great. I just can't wait to fight, man. It's been one hell of a year, and I can't wait to finish it off with a bang.
Yeah, man. I was going to ask. I mean, it's good to hear that the physical side's okay. How about the mental side, man? I mean, I know this is this is your life, and I know training is good, but the fighting is what it's about. How has this been on you and your family and everything else? Like everything you've had to go through.
I've been talking about it recently all day. Actually, the last 2 days, kind of found out what depression is. I wouldn't talk about it before because I wasn't in their shoes, and I got put in their shoes this last summer. I was at a point where we came home from July and didn't talk to no one, and if I wanted to talk to you, I would call you. Mm-hmm. But if you were trying to reach me, I didn't care. I didn't talk to no one. I was in my own zone, and it was crazy. I'm a Raptors fan. It hit me hard when DeMar Rosen talked about it. He talked about depression. Talked about how money. He wish everybody in the world had money so they could understand that depression is a real thing. And it was crazy, and I can talk about it now because I've been through it, and I can tell people, don't cut yourself off from other people. Your family, your friends, someone's there, reach out and talk to them about something. If you got something on your mind, go tell them and talk to them. So I learned a lot about myself this year, and I just can't wait to get things back to normal and get back to the blessed era and do this fight in December.
That's awesome that you're willing to talk about that, man. I appreciate that. Talk about training, Max. I mean, as you're preparing for this fight, I mean, obviously, I guess you're about to get into it full strength. I mean, are there any adjustments, or whether it be precautionary or whatever else? I mean, is this going to impact the way you train or the way you approach a fight? Is anything changed?
Yeah, not really training wise a little bit. My trainers and they changing things up a little bit, but the more it changes my perspective on life, and that's what it did. I'm glad obstacles happen. I'm a big believer. You guys know I always say it is what it is, and I'm a big believer in things happen for a reason. And I believe this thing happened for a reason. I believe I got slowed down around this time for a reason. Now we're going to pick it back up. People told me I fell off. Well, tell me why I left it. Because we're about to go back up, and people about to find out why I'm one of the best fighters in the world, and why I'm going to be number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world someday.
No doubt. You people say that sometimes, Max, that things happen for a reason. Do you know what the reason is? I mean, have you been able to put your finger on what the reason was?
No. That's the beautiful thing about life. That's the beautiful thing about this kind of stuff. We find out as long as we go out there, like I've been saying. We're going to find out. We're going to find out. And I can't wait to find it out, but we also got to find something out in December. So I'm excited about that. I'm just glad I'm back. I'm glad I'm good. I got a 6-year-old son that's going on 23. I love that little guy. Yeah, he's been helping me a lot through this stuff. I got a loving family, loving friends, a loving fans. Even you guys, some of you guys was even reaching out during the media and stuff was reaching out to me. Not even for media stuff, just for my well-being, and I'm thankful for you guys. It's been great.
That's awesome, man. Well, let's talk about this matchup, man. Brian's got a great record, and I mean, obviously, you were already preparing for him anyway. How much you've been thinking about him? How much you've been thinking about the fight? I mean, what do you think about this matchup as we're a couple months out?
I thought it was a fight, and I got 8 weeks coming up, and that's when I get consumed by it. These training camps, we talk a bunch of times before my fights, and you know how I go. When I fight, I get in this certain mode. Like I'm here, I'm there, but I'm not. I'm thinking about the fighting and stuff. So fighting is great. Ortega's great. He got a great camp behind him. He's a great dude, like you said. He got a great record. He's on this unbelievable record, and I can't wait to test him, Yeah, I think so. This is the perfect time for this fight, Both young guys, both hungry. A young lion versus a young shark. And sharks eat anything. So I can't wait to get mines and devour in December.
I like that. I guess when people look at Brian, they see the submission game, of course, and then they see, I guess you just say the heart, you know what I mean? The ability to come from behind. Which one of those impresses you the most, or which one of those concerns you the most? Is it his grappling abilities, or is it, maybe that heart where it seems like he never quits?
I think so. He's just an all-around fighter. Even his stand-up is good, People keep saying that this is like a striker versus grappler matchup. I think so. He's a well-rounded fighter, but people keep sleeping on, my lineage. I come from one of my head trainers, Ryan Lazar. He's a black belt out of Pedro Sauer, and Pedro Sauer is one of the main ones that came over with the Gracies to help spread jiu-jitsu. So to America and stuff, or to the world, period. Mm-hmm. And I think so. We me and him is like we kind of came out like the same way, under the same umbrella. So it's cool to see, two young guys at this level that kind of came up the same umbrella, and I can't wait. People keep sleeping on, Max can do this, and he can do that. A good magician never shows his tricks. Just because I didn't show certain stuff in my game yet, people keep calling me out on it. Why dig deep in the bag when you don't have to go that far into it?
I dig it. He's done some interviews where he says that, I guess in his contract, he's been told that he's fighting for a title no matter what happens to you. Have you heard that? Were you aware of that? And I mean, does that bother you a little bit?
That. I heard that the same thing as you, and it doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm fully focused. You know, don't get ready for Plan B. Plan A, the undisputed featherweight champion is gonna show up December 7th, make weight, and then I'm gonna get on that. I'm gonna get in that octagon. So don't be worried too much about Plan A. Plan B. Plan A is ready to go.
I dig it. So I guess as this thing started, everybody was asking, man, is Max's time at featherweight done? Is that lightweight move imminent? But I mean, you're talking about reestablishing, re-going. I mean, are we jumping to conclusions there? Do you think your future is long at featherweight, or do you feel like that lightweight move is on the horizon?
Look, when I got into the UFC, or when I got into fighting period, I wanted to be a world champion. I knocked that off the list. Undisputed world title. I wanted a title. I'm a champion. Champions, you don't need a belt. I always told myself I was a champion. I try to carry myself as one. But I wanted a world title. I got one. Now you make new goals. And one of the new goals is like defend and defend and defend and keep defending. And also one of the new goals was now I want to be the number one pound for pound fighter. I'm the number in the world. I'm the number 4 pound for pound fighter in the world right now. There's 3 guys in front of me. The number 1 guy is a friend to me. Kung Fu Panda, DC. But he knows he can get this work if he really wanted it. That's all just side. But that's it. That's the next plan. First thing first is Ortega. We take care of business, and then whatever's there. If it's a move up a weight class that I got to go to show that I'm the number 1 pound for pound fighter. If it's to stay here at 45, if it's to jump to heavyweight and fight that guy, that whatever it is, whatever UFC thinks, I want to be the number 1 pound for pound best guy in the world. No questions asked.
That's awesome, man. Well, it's good to have you back, Max. Glad you're feeling good. Any other last thoughts, messages, anything that you want to get out there? I know people are worried about you or thinking about you. What's the message you want out there to everybody?
I love you guys. Thank you guys for all the worries, all the prayers, all the good support. And make sure you guys tune in December. Your boy is back. We don't need to worry anymore. Bless air in full effect. And I can't wait for the words to end still.
All right, so there you have it, Max Holloway. Man, first of all, I was surprised, man. I didn't know, hearing him open up on depression was definitely not expecting to hear that, man. I mean, always such a positive, kind of upbeat guy, and for him to admit that he was kind of dealing with some depression, and man, I thought it was really cool of him to discuss it and to talk about it. Mental health is such a hot button topic these days. Our good friend Mauro Ranallo, of course, always a big champion of mental health concerns as well. Man, bipolar rock and roll. I've seen some people tweeting lately they're just seeing it for the first time. If you haven't seen that, I know we talked a lot about it at the time when it came out, but if you haven't seen bipolar rock and roll, definitely go find it. Powerful stuff. But Max, to talk about that stuff, I thought it was cool. It's good. I mean, this is important for people to hear and to be open. And I just love what he said, man. If you're depressed, you're feeling down, man, don't cut the world off, man. Don't cut the world off. Speak to somebody, talk to somebody, and it's good advice, man. It's great advice. I went through I was divorced, actually. The first time I was married before, and I got divorced, and man, for a year, like, I shut myself off from the world, man. I didn't want to talk to my friends. I don't know. I felt like people were judging me, and I don't know. It was a rough time in my life, man. And in retrospect, I realized that was stupid, man, to cut myself out from the world. Nah, man, if anything, you gotta connect with the world. You gotta stay with it. So I don't know. It was cool to hear Max talk about that. I will say, a little concern, that he says I don't know what happened, and the good news is he says, listen, I've been tested. They can't find anything. The concussion-like symptoms that I had earlier this year, they're not coming back. And that's good news, right? I mean, you want to hear it. Clean bill of health. But I don't know. Like, I feel like I wish we had an idea of what it was, just to feel a little better about it, I guess, I know that really wouldn't change anything, I guess, physically, but just to know, and so that we're more aware of, I guess, exactly what it was, so we know it's not going to happen again. Now, I'm not talking about from, oh, I'm worried this fight's going to get canceled again. I'm not talking about from that point of view. I just mean overall his health. So, that concerned me a little bit, but I do appreciate his honesty. And he said, listen, don't worry, I'm going to be back. I got this, and I've been through a battery of tests and all that. So, you got to believe him there. You got to believe him there. So, of course, we want for the best. And man, that card is fantastic. Just the top two fights there, Holloway and Ortega, and then Jędrzejczyk and Shevchenko. Like, goodness, that's two fantastic fights. So I'm stoked for that. And, of course, I know we'll be talking to Brian Ortega as we get closer as well. So, obviously a favorite of the road show as well. So, all right, listen. So what I want to do now, I am not on the road this week. The MMA road show is in Dry Dock. I actually don't travel at all this month, man. I'm home. This is a long stretch for me here in Las Vegas. We'll see how long my wife can put up with me. I am taking a week's vacation next week, which is nice. So I won't be on the site as much. Just taking a little time off to handle some stuff around the house. Basically, we're coming towards the end of the year, and I've just got vacation days I haven't burned. So I'm going to take a week off and kind of just handle some stuff around the house. But, as you know, we have never missed a damn week at all. So I will get together with Cold Coffee here in Las Vegas, and we will do a show even though I'm on vacation. So we don't miss. We don't miss. But Cold Coffee is traveling. He is right now, if I believe I'm right, he is in Long Island, New York. Earlier he was in Manhattan. And just to kind of give you an idea, he was doing media in Manhattan. Tomorrow he will do the weigh-ins. Him and Mike Bohn are in Long Island. They'll do the weigh-ins in the morning, both the official and the ceremonial weigh-ins for Bellator 208. Then they will jump on a bus to head to Connecticut, which I think is about 2 hours away, so that they can cover Bellator 207 along with Dave Mandel. Now, Dave Mandel's already in Connecticut at Mohegan Sun. And then after that is over, all three of those guys will jump on a bus and head back to Long Island where they'll get ready to cover Bellator 208 the next night. So it's been a crazy week, and Cold Coffee's got a feel for everything up there in Long Island and Connecticut. So he's up there with Bellator 207 and 208. So I thought, hey, let's hear from our man Cold Coffee and find out what's going on in that neck of the woods.
All right, thank you, John, for the nice toss from warm, dry Las Vegas, where here we are sitting in, where are we? Where are we now?
The Hilton Garden Inn. And
the Hilton Garden Inn Melville or something, way up here in Long Island, but where it is raining, and it was raining in New York City today.
all day.
All day. It was gray and wet, but it still couldn't take that shine off the fact of it being wonderful New York City. There is no place like New York City. Very unique place, man. Just the bustling crowd, just the lights. Luckily, in my room last night, I had those blackout curtains. They kind of block it, but there was a couple spaces where the curtains didn't go, and I had the lights from the theater district shining into my room last night, and I was like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to get to sleep. But I'll tell you what, after sitting on the bed, I was out. I was out like a light last night. So
it's better the lights than the odor.
That's true. That's true. Luckily, I was high enough. I didn't get the street smell. We did get the smells today. Well, we'll bring you back into like what was happening this week. But today we had media day there at Viacom headquarters.
Conference.
Press conference. And yesterday we had the media day there. But there was certain parts of the room where you could literally smell like the street sewer or something. And some of our friends with Bellator were talking about how some media came up to them and like, why does it smell? They're like, bro, it's New York. It's like the busiest, craziest city in the world. Crazy times. But joining me here at the wonderful Melvin Garden Inn, or the Hilton Garden Inn Melville, that's like a mouthful. That's a mouthful. Is the young Mike Bohn. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm very good. It's been a busy week, especially coming off last week. It's been never ending. I still haven't been home. I think I left home on the 23rd of September. Spent a couple days in California seeing my dad, and then came out to Vegas for 229 and then came straight here. So it's been nonstop, one big event to another, but how can you complain? I mean, this is kind of the finest portion of MMA almost this year. There's been a good stretch here. These are some big fights going on, so it's hard to complain. That's
true. All right, well, let's take it back to yesterday. Yesterday we had the open workouts, and that was fun. So what did you think about that? It was for those that didn't see it, go to MMA Junkie. You could check out all the little videos and stuff. But we got to see Ryan Bader, we got to see Matt Mitrione, we saw the legend himself, Fedor Emelianenko, and we also saw
the legend himself, Chael Sonnen.
The legend himself, yes, the mouthpiece of legend, Chael Sonnen. What was your thought on yesterday when you saw the guys out there? Because you never know what you're going to get, especially when guys that have been in the game for so long. We've seen in the past guys will go in there and just kind of dial it in. They just want to talk. Luckily these were closed to the public, so they couldn't pull the one where, I'm just going to have a Q&A with the fans. They had to kind of work out because it was just media. They did give us some scrums, but looking at how everybody looked yesterday, what were your thoughts?
It's hard to read too much into it. You have to think we're dealing with, between these four guys, a 35-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 41-year-old, and a 42-year-old.
That's crazy.
These guys aren't spring chickens. Ryan Bader is the youngest man in this tournament from the outset. He's 35, so I wasn't really expecting a whole lot. You're not going to get like a extremely high energy, Tony Ferguson-esque crazy workout or anything like that. It was basically just like hitting some mitts. Matt Mitrione didn't even hit mitts. He kind of just stretched for a little bit.
Stretched and then air box.
Yeah, shadow boxed a little bit. There wasn't too much to take away from it. It was pretty traditional stuff, but it was more the scrums. We were fortunate enough to get one-on-ones as well in a very awesome setting, right in Times Square. Beautiful backdrop out on the balcony there right outside. So that was very cool. And I think everyone brought some interesting points, minus Fedor Emelianenko, who doesn't have a whole lot to say ever. And it seems even particularly this fight week more so than others, he's just not given us much to work with. So, but other than that, Chael Sonnen was great. Matt Mitrione I thought was great. Ryan Bader was great. I enjoyed that open workout. It was good.
Yeah, props to Viacom, man. They have a really nice headquarters right in the smack middle of Times Square. So we were able to do the interviews, and it was great. If you guys haven't seen the interviews that Mike did, go to MMA Junkie and you can check them out. But literally sitting up on this balcony on probably I think it was like the 4th floor, 5th floor, 7th floor, something like that. 8th floor. And just overlooking the street down below, but you can see the Times Square ball off to the side, and it was a great view because there's where you really just sort of you're able to take in and feel that you're in New York. There's a lot of times you get downtown into a certain city and you don't know where you're at. It doesn't have a certain feel to it, but just being smack dab in the middle of New York City, man, it's definitely a feel like no other. And props to them for having to kill a location. And they were very, very nice to all this week, kind of hosting, all the festivities that have been happening, and it's been pretty cool. Which takes us to today. Today we finally got to see some of the other fighters. And I do want to go back and say that, for most of the stuff that we've been dealing here in Manhattan was Bellator 208. Dave Mandel, God bless his soul, has been, went to the Mohegan Sun and has been dealing with a lot of that stuff. So he actually was the one that shot the ceremonial weigh-ins and stuff that you see on that. So we're going to meet back up with him tomorrow for the event. So always good to see him. But yeah, it's been a crazy week of just kind of shuffling to and fro from the different places. But so if we're heavy on the Bellator 208 talk, it's because that's kind of where we've been living in this moment.
And just generally, I mean, there hasn't been much in the way of media availabilities. I think Bellator sent out some phoner opportunities last week, and there's stories. We do have Bellator 207 fighter stories up on the site. I believe Fernando Praches spoke to a number of those fighters who are outside of the main event. So we have stories, but in terms of fight week, the only availability for those fighters was Bader and Mitrione at the open workouts yesterday. That was the only time we've seen them this week.
It's crazy. So today we had the press conference when we had more of the 208 fighters. We actually got to see the main card, and it was good to see, some familiar faces and some faces we haven't seen in some time. But who are some of the people that maybe stood out to you from today's press conference?
Of course, Chael Sonnen.
Besides
yeah,
Chael.
he stole the show. But outside of that, Benson Henderson. It's always interesting
It's good
to see him.
Ben.
Yeah, he's good. I think he made it very clear that he's maybe not the most thrilled with the schedule for his number of fights he's been getting. So I think he wants to be a little more active.
You think part of that's because also just how much he's getting paid per event, that they're trying to space those out? It's got to be, because what were they paying him, like 500 or?
I think it was a little bit less. I'd have to go look back. I'm not sure how many times he's actually fought in somewhere where his purse is being disclosed, but he's definitely getting.
He's making a good chunk
six
of
figures
change.
because he was one of the first guys
that switched over, the big name former champs, Yeah,
and they were willing to pay him for it. So. For him, it makes a little bit of sense. And in some fights, he's gone through some hard fights too. He had those first two, the ones with Koreshkov and Chandler. Those weren't easy fights. So for him, his Bellator run has been up and down. But I think he hinted too, maybe he doesn't have the most time left in the world in the sport, so he wants to make the most of it. He put his hand up saying if there's a opening in the welterweight Grand Prix tournament, he wants to get in there. He wants to be the guy they call. So, maybe that comes to fruition at some point if someone falls out there. But he was one of the guys that was notable. Czech Congo, I thought was more spirited than you've seen him. He did a little dance when I brought up the fact
he was in good spirits.
Yeah, I brought up the fact that maybe he could be an alternate for the heavyweight tournament, particularly if something crazy happens between Chael and Fedor in the next, whatever, I don't even know, 36 hours or however long we have till the fight, at the time of this recording. So, he was good. It's always good to see him. In Czech Congo, man, it's crazy the longevity this guy's had. It's his 31st fight between Bellator and UFC.
Yeah.
And that's
what was he
tied.
saying? It was because of the supplements. No drugs.
Yes, no supplements.
And some supplements that he ran into or found or something.
Yeah.
He was telling the story and I couldn't quite understand what he was saying.
He's hard to understand at times.
He's like, I took supplements. I find them.
They must be good supplements because at 43 years old, that guy is still cut as hell.
Yeah,
it's
dude,
crazy.
He's a beast.
His physique is unreal. So, some of these guys, but I don't know. It was tough. You see all those dudes up on the stage and it's like, you're asking some of them questions almost out of sympathy because you just don't want them to go through a Henry Corrales. Love him, but it was a 50-minute or so press conference. And
I was going to say his opponent, Andy Main, I think got one question as well.
Yeah, and he got one question, and it was because we were probably being encouraged to not leave these guys hanging, and we feel bad for them as well. But
it's hard when you got Chael up there. You're right, Chael, and you got Fedor up there. Like,
you don't really need too much else. Maybe bring the co-main event, maybe the Congo fight, just because there's something there. But there's no need to have all 10 guys up there. And Chael even said it. We spoke with him, did an interview, and you guys will hear it later in this podcast, basically saying, like, I don't know. I follow the sport. I'm an analyst. He works for ESPN and he covers the sport. He follows it as closely as anyone on the fighter side. I imagine he's like, I don't have the foggiest idea who some of these dudes are up here. I didn't even know they're fighting on the same card as me. Like, I just found out today, and I'm sure some of you media people just found out today too. So
I'm wondering how much of that is truth and how much is just Chael being Chael and still sort of selling it.
It's probably somewhere in the middle.
I bet I feel you're right on that, because I bet I guarantee he knew that Benson was fighting, and he knew that Czech was fighting. But when it gets to the Russians and maybe the Corrales main fight, that he's probably like, and I guarantee if you asked him to pick a fight off the prelims, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, the prelims are for Bellator or something
entirely
different.
They're a beast of its own. Yeah.
Yeah.
But crazy. Well, one of the things I did think was really unique and was good, and you could touch on this because we won't play the audio, but you guys can go back and listen to it on MMA Junkies YouTube. You can find it there, or you can find it on the website. You took some time and you talked with Scott, but during the press conference, he really was talking about his plans and their expansion into the European market and the different European series. I thought it was really incredible. One talk of opening up the London office, which I guess is already up and running, but just their aspirations and their push for the international. It's funny because for so long people have always kind of given it, Bellator's the little brother of the UFC, they're the ones chasing their coattails. But when at a time when we almost feel like I see the UFC contracting their international operations, I feel like Bellator right now is expanding quite a bit.
Yeah, there's opportunity for them there. I mean, look at what's happening in December. They're going to Hawaii before
Yeah.
the UFC's getting there. I know that's not international for the American
Might as
side,
well
but
be.
Yeah, might as well.
That's one of those wish list places for me.
It's an untapped market for the UFC still at this point, and they're struggling big time to get in there. And Bellator is doing not one but two shows, as we broke Thursday morning on MMA Junkie and USA Today.
Yeah.
They're doing a salute to the troops.
Yep,
I
fight
believe
for the troops type
it's
deal.
called. Yeah, and that
Guess
should
they
be
can't go fight for the troops.
Yeah.
The UFC would get upset at that one.
Yeah, so they're doing it big time in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But to speak about the European scene in general, I mean, they hired David Green, the former Bellator or Bama matchmaker, as their CEO, I believe, of international operations, something like that. Excuse me if I'm getting his exact title wrong, but yeah, they're putting efforts in there. They're looking to really grow their roots in Europe and the UK, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, what it actually looks like, how much recognition these shows get from the media on that side of the pond. On this side too, like, are they going to have fights? How are we going to be covering them on MMA Junkie and stuff? These are all things we still need to figure out, but they're at least attempting stuff, so it's should be interesting to see how this all unfolds in 2019.
Yeah, it's kind of neat because it almost feels like a lot of their shows, or so many of their shows now, are pushing overseas. Yeah, it makes it tough because you're like, well, they're going to, they're going here, they're going to Jerusalem, they're going all over the place, and it's like, wow, when are they going to be back in the States? They got a very adventurous schedule kind of coming up, and good on them for it. I mean, I think right now they have that. It's nice, I guess, when you have a nice little influx of money. When people are pushing in, you're like, let's. This is the time to expand, and they're certainly doing that.
They just need to get that tape delay thing figured out.
Well, I thought that was the difference with DAZN, because I thought that was live at the same time.
So I don't know exactly how it's going to work. I do know for their next international show, which I believe is Tel Aviv, which is headlined by, I believe, Patricio Freire versus, he's escaping, Emmanuel Sanchez for the featherweight title. I believe that event is taking place on Thursday, and it won't air stateside until Friday, and it'll still be on DAZN, but it'll be simulcast with Paramount, so it'll still be tape delayed for the people in the States. So no one, unless you're there live at the venue watching the fight, you're not going to be able to see it live until the Friday, and we assume the results are still going to get leaked and stuff like that by fans in attendance.
It's just so bizarre they still choose to do that.
It's tough. I think that's the one hurdle.
But that last Bellator that they had that was in the States, wasn't that at the same time? On DAZN, that was live.
Yep. So anything, like, basically if it airs on Paramount, they'll simulcast it on DAZN, and then they'll have their exclusive events on DAZN. But I think when it still comes to the international shows, I don't know, like, maybe if they do something in, like, London where they would typically do a tape delay, I don't know if it'll air live on DAZN. Like, I don't think they've got to that stage yet of maybe figuring that out because they don't have something on the books for that right now. But yeah, these are things they need to sort out, because I think in 2018 coming up on 2019, you can't be tape delaying stuff, especially that 24-hour tape delay. That's
I mean, I get
absurd.
it what they were trying to do, but it just seems like it's more alienating to some people, because you're like, why do we have to wait? They're finding out anyways, who wins the fight, and it's just.
And you're encouraging, particularly, with stuff that happens overseas and whatnot, you're encouraging illegal streaming and stuff like that. Like, they just need to get it sorted. I think that's one of their big hurdles. Then 2019, they should really be focusing to overcome.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I won't make this too long. We'll hop back, we'll toss it back over to John, but I guess looking at the fights tomorrow, are there particular fights that you're really, really looking forward to? That maybe some sleeper fights, or just any particular fight that you're just like, I really think this is one you should keep an eye on?
It'll be interesting. I think there's a number of things there you can look at. Of course, we don't need to go too much into it because I think we've given a lot of coverage. The tournament fight,
For sure.
Bader and Mitrione, and that's compelling in itself. We'll see what happens with that, but interested to see what Sergey Karatanov looks like coming back. Lorenz Larkin, his Bellator run definitely hasn't been what people thought it would be when he moved over from the UFC.
That's for sure.
That's, as of right now, I know we mentioned Benson Henderson earlier, possibly being an alternate, but that is your alternate fight right now in the Bellator welterweight tournament. So we'll see how he can perform. Ian Pascu, who's, I believe, Larkin's third opponent for this fight, has a huge opportunity here. That's a guy who I believe trains out of SBG Ireland. He'll have John Kavanagh in his corner tomorrow night. And then got to be, Baby Slice, Kevin Ferguson Jr. He's making... I mean, we will naturally gravitate towards him because he is the son of the late Kimbo Slice. I think everyone just looks at him in a certain way because of that, but he is finally making his lightweight debut officially. He started his career at 175 pounds, I believe, worked his way down to 170. His last fight was a 160 catch weight, and now he's officially at 155, and our Dave Mandel spoke to him on site after the weigh-ins at Mohegan, and he said it was a super easy cut. He did it perfectly, and he's on that team right now, working with AJ McKee, with Aaron Pico, with some of these other dudes that are really on fire. Team. Joey Davis, etc., etc. Chuck Liddell, apparently he's working out of that gym with Antonio McKee. So you got to keep an eye on him. He said in his interview with Dave that he's still very early in his career. I think this is only his 5th professional fight, but he said, the way I'm progressing, the way I'm feeling about my skill set development, I can see myself fighting for a title in 2 years.
That's awesome.
So
very true.
We'll see what happens.
And he could definitely come out from the shadow of his father, which is a huge shadow to be behind.
And in a different way. He's doing it his own way. He's not going out there feeling the pressure of I have to be a knockout guy. Right. He, I believe, 2 of his 3 wins are by rear naked choke submission, something like that.
His last 2 win submissions, and then the one before that was a TKO.
And I believe it was from ground and pound. So he's a guy that's kind of entrenching his own path. He's not his father. He's not trying to be the style his father was, and he is carving his own way. And I think that's pretty amazing.
All right. Well, let's hop over to 208. We got to see a lot of those guys today, but obviously the Chael Fedor fight, that goes without saying. We're very, very interested in that fight to see how that one can play out. But we could touch on that second. But looking at the rest of the guys on the main card, is there a particular fight? I know I'm very interested to see the fight of the Russians. I think that should be a serious smashing fight. I think that if they did fight of the night bonuses, I think that they'd be one in the running. But what fight is interesting for you on that?
Yeah, just like you said, Alexander Shlemenko versus Anatoly Tokov. That's interesting. I mean, Shlemenko threw a little shade today at the press conference. Basically, one of the Russian reporters asked him, because for them, you don't really see, especially in U.S. promotions, 2 Russians fighting each other. I mean, Fedor Emelianenko even said, when I went to his mural unveiling on Tuesday, which was the first thing we did on Fight Week, it was down in Brooklyn. He has his own personal mural that was funded by Bellator, and it's outside of a restaurant down there in southern Brooklyn, which is a Russian heavy area.
So it might actually stay up for a while.
Yeah, I mean,
without getting tagged or repainted.
Well, it's actually direct. So they told me that they had originally commissioned it to be at this one restaurant, and then they moved it to this other place, which is directly across the street from a police station. Oh. And they said they did that to ensure it wouldn't get tagged and stuff.
At least not right away. Eventually, it always will happen.
So the plan is, I spoke to the restaurant owner, is to take it down mid-November. But if Fedor wins this fight, the plan is to probably keep it up till maybe the end of January, because the tournament final round is as of now slated for January 26th. So if Fedor wins, he'll go in there. But anyways, going back to my original point, someone had asked Fedor about fighting other Russian fighters, and he said early in his career he didn't have a ton of control over his contracts, but as he came into the post-Pride stage of his career, Strikeforce and all that, and now with Bellator, he has it written in his contract that he doesn't have to fight other Russian fighters.
Wow. Did not know that.
Yeah, you don't see a ton of that. So right here you have these 2 Russians fighting each other, and basically what one of the reporters asked Shlemenko today is do you have a problem with this? And I heard that you were willing to take this fight against a fellow Russian because you just want to finish your Bellator contract as soon as possible because you're not pleased with your situation there. And he basically confirmed that was the truth.
Yeah.
So that's kind of compelling. It seems
very interesting. That doesn't happen anywhere else. Americans will fight Americans.
There's
Brazilians
a little bit of that with Brazilians. Sometimes
a little bit.
See if
they're close within. Yeah. They maybe worked at some of the same camps and stuff, but not like this. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So potentially Shlemenko right now, he has the most wins, knockouts, fights in Bellator middleweight history. Yeah,
that's crazy.
So he's a guy that's made a huge impact in that organization. For all intents and purposes, this could possibly be his last fight. So that's kind of compelling. And I am interested in the Czech Congo Timothy Johnson fight. It could be garbage. It could be a bad fight. That's one thing. It's in the middle of the card. It could bring this thing to a grinding halt and be so bad. But Czech Congo, man, 43 years old. We mentioned him earlier. He is won 6 fights in a row. He has the most wins in Bellator heavyweight history. Like, it's crazy. Like, you know, for what he's accomplished, you could make a strong argument that if he wins this fight, he should be fighting the winner of this Bellator heavyweight tournament. Like, he has made his mark. So we'll see what happens there. And Timothy Johnson, I mean, he had his ups and downs in the UFC. He had 7 fights there, and it was win-loss, win-loss, win-loss the entire time there. But he's coming in, and you know, maybe he can bring Congo's streak to a halt and kind of put himself in that conversation. So
I'm going to stay positive on that fight. I'm hoping that's a brawl. I'm going to stay positive and hope that it's not of they're being too respectful and just kind of walk around a little bit until somebody laughs a couple of.
It could be
I'm hoping they just
kind
of go in there and somebody just throws down.
And then last thing, I mean, we have the MMA debut of Robson Gracie Jr. on the prelims. That's kind of your, I guess, quote unquote featured prelim that has. And you know, anytime a Gracie fights in MMA, I can't remember his exact relationship. I think he's the nephew of Renzo Gracie.
Okay, well that's close enough.
Yeah,
you know, because sometimes you find that the lineage is questionable and they're down the line somewhere. You know, so that's cool. That's legit.
Yeah, so you never know. I mean, they have a very successful Gracie right now, Neiman Gracie, so maybe he can, you know, do some work there as well.
Yeah. All right, well then finally before we toss it back over to John, I will let you jump on the main card and give me your thoughts about, the main event, Chael Sonnen and Fedor. How did you go? How did you lean on your staff pick?
I picked Chael, which, I mean, I have no idea, man. I don't know how this is one of those fights, like, I thought Chael was going to have a real tough time with Rampage, and he went in there and outstruck him. Like, you have no idea. Chael is so unpredictable. And everyone thinks, oh, he's going to get destroyed in the stand-up, all that stuff. Crazily enough, I believe, you know, Mark Raimondi of MMA Fighting told me that when Chael got dropped by Vanderlei in his fight, that was the only time he's ever been knocked down in his MMA career by a standing strike. Like, of course, he fell over himself against Anderson Silva going for that ridiculous spinning back.
That was ridiculous.
You know, a clean knockdown.
Cost him the fight.
It did. So you just never know what's going to happen there. I mean, I think Chael could, you know, take him down, and all he has to do is win 2 of 3 rounds and avoid the knockdown. And for him, someone like Chael with his wrestling, it only takes 2 takedowns to get that done. So
if he gets him down, you're right.
He could keep him down. But so I either see that happening, or during one of those takedowns, Fedor gets one of his crazy arm bars from on bottom or something, because he's so good at doing that. And Chael Sonnen, you know, he has 15 losses, and I think the large majority of them are by submissions. So I kind of see it going one of those 2 ways.
Come from behind submissions after he's been ground and pounding or laying and doing his thing.
So I think that fight, it's going to be very interesting. It's the most interesting, compelling fight of the weekend for sure. It's the biggest fight of the weekend. You know, the most, you look at our traffic, what's clicking and stuff, that's the most, you know, fascinating and most intriguing to our readers as well, as I think. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out. Which way did you go on that?
I went with Fedor in that, you know, and I was the same, just same that some of the things you touched on. I think when it came to the striking, you know, was thinking that Fedor is going to get that shot, you know, just like when he went in with Mir, I was like, yeah, Mir's got this. And he just polished on Mir. He studied Mir's tendencies. Like, he knew exactly how he was going to lean in there and worked his shots. So even though he's not the most outspoken, this is the kind of guy that, even though he does say that he doesn't watch stuff during fight week, he does watch it leading up. So I think he knows Chael's tendencies. I think if anything, he's going to know his tells of when Chael wants to try to make a dive in there and try to go in for a grab. And I'm thinking that he's going to catch him on one of these shots. That being said, watching Chael at the open workout, his hands looked a lot better than what I remember. He at least seemed more into the striking. He had quickness. His the way that he was working out with his striking coach, you could tell he'd been working on it. I mean, his hands were sharp. The coach was calling out things. Chael was getting it. His steps looked good. In fact, and people are gonna blast me for this, how close he was working and the timing with his striking coach looked better to me than what Connor looked with Roddy that last open workout that we saw. And not saying that people are like, oh, the strikers are totally different. But in terms of watching the open workout and being like, wow, his striking looks on point for him. From where we've seen Connor's, his striking didn't look on point from that open workout. Watching Chael's striking for him, for each guy in their own right, Chael's striking looked good, which made me think, wow, maybe the stand-up game isn't so one-sided in this particular area. Because you're right, most people and me along that same lines were like, all right, if it's going to stay up, Fedor's going to get him. He's got the power. He's going to get him. But watching Chael, it's the kind of guy that you're like, people underestimate him. And that's the thing.
Do.
People underestimate his striking. And he's got some power. Is it the same power as Fedor? No. But he has power enough to where he can land a shot, stun you, get you off guard, and get you down. And in this case, that's all he needs. So Fedor needs to be wary of that. If Chael catches him with one of these shots and kind of stuns him, that's all Chael needs. He just needs an open. He just needs an opening. So I'm going to stick with my pick. I mean, well, it's too late. The picks are on the site. But, but I felt a little bit more like I could have picked wrong by leading Fedor. So, but that was my pick in that situation. I went with the man himself.
But what does Fedor think of the UFC 229 brawl? Do you think he's been asked enough times this week? I think
times.
Every single interview, and no offense to any fellow media members, because we asked it too.
It's a
legitimate question, but
it's a legit question.
He made it very clear, starting I think as far back as Monday or Tuesday, that he didn't watch it.
Yeah,
he's not watching these things during fight week. He doesn't have an opinion on it.
Yeah,
and every single day he's just been asked it continuously, and his answer has not changed. So,
well, there was a part of that, that struck me in little weird things that I pick up in like the presser. You would think that most of us are asking this because just like when you hear about how a lot of Russians don't want to fight other Russians, there is a lot of Russian pride, and people are paying attention. I think fighters pay attention to what other fighters are doing. So you would think, yes, he's paying attention to what's going on about anybody that could be out there fighting. But the thing that struck me today was when he was talking about his fighting, and one of the Russian media guys asked him if he was hoping to get back into Russia. He was like, it doesn't matter. I don't care if I fight in Russia again, which to me struck me as like, okay, maybe things aren't the best or whatever for him to not want to go back and fight in Russia. Maybe think, okay, well, maybe he's not all that into the whole it's Russia or nothing else sort of thing. He's about him. He's about his career's taking him all over the place. So when I heard that, it kind of struck me as like, maybe he didn't really pay attention to all this other shit. Yeah. It's a different organization, different weight classes, guys that he's never going to fight. And he's not buying into the whole, hey, this is somebody that was part of the Russians or part of one of the Russian caucuses or something. He just doesn't care, So
it's weird. Like, you would think, though, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, him and Khabib are the two most famous, successful Russian fighters in MMA history.
In MMA, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's Russian boxers.
Yeah. Other people, I mean, I'm speaking MMA exclusively, and you would think just like he hears about this, he asked so many times, like, how much downtime does he have during this week? Like, you'd think he'd be like, oh, Jerry Millen, like, pull it up on your iPhone. I'm curious. And I don't believe that he hasn't seen it. I think he just maybe doesn't want to say something and maybe have his comments misinterpreted one way or the other.
And that's probably
blow
true.
Up in the Russian media.
Because a lot of the shit, especially, it got very political in the whole lead up with Khabib and Connors. I think he probably smart enough to know that once you open up that avenue, then the political talk comes in.
Then what do you think of the Putin stuff?
What do you think about the Putin
stuff? The Dagestan relationship and just all these million things. Like, so
it's better just say, I didn't watch it.
It's very intelligent on his behalf because it opens a whole floodgate. And that's what all the Fedor stories would be about this week. Like, we wrote a story, being like, he said he doesn't get bothered by Chael Sonnen's trash talk, stuff like that. Like, little things, the few nuggets we can get out of him. But that would have dominated
headline. He even made light when he said, like, he didn't look good with his clothes on or something.
Yeah, like, but if it was like, Khabib acted unprofessionally or like something like that, or like, did anything that was negative, that would have been the top stories, the big headlines all week. And, maybe it would have been good for us traffic-wise because we would have, that's what everyone would have pushed. But for him, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we've wasted enough of your guys' time. We got a few cold Budweisers.
Not our normal beverages. Isn't that how they're referred to on
better
this podcast?
Better is frosty beverages than cold Budweisers. We didn't have our normal flavor here, but you take what you can get at the
Hilton Garden
Melville. It's like, it's whatever. So we're going to toss it back to John, but first let's take you to the interview that young Mike Bohn here did with Chael Sonnen post the Bellator 208 press conference today.
Okay, so Chael, we just wrapped up the pre-fight press conference. Just your initial thoughts. How did you feel about it? One of your final stare downs with Fedor.
It's a total snooze fest. I mean, I don't know why it has to be this way, right? I don't know why they wouldn't just do what you have the insight to do. Grab me, turn the camera on, and let's rock and roll. I've sold more pay-per-views than anybody, more tickets than anybody. That was on the other side of the bridge. Now I'm over here with the boys in San Jose. I still got the live gate record. I did it a year ago at MSG, and nobody's touched it since. I will outdo myself once again, beat my own records. It's the same thing I've had to do my whole career, and nobody else wants to talk to anybody else. And I'm not even trying to be an arrogant prick about it. I realize how that sounds. Why would they have a press conference and bring other people in here? What the hell does anybody want to ask them for? I'm looking around the stage, bunch of very nice guys, bunch of guys that I like very much. I didn't know they were on the card till they sat down here today. I love the sport. I'm going to follow it very closely. I have the foggiest idea. And neither did you, and neither did anybody else. And I'm just looking around going, we really could have saved some time. Speaking of saving time, if there's a quick fight up in the Mohegan Sun, they can just bring one of those sons of bitches down here. I'll fight them tomorrow night. We can save Bellator on the travel money. I don't have any idea why we have to spread this thing out. People are talking about a quick turnaround to January 26th. What's quick about that? Let's go in the back, let's have a drink of water, and let's walk back out there. If I got to change my shorts so there's a red corner, blue corner, let's do it. Matt Mitrione is saying I'm too small to win this tournament. Well, I'll cut him in half and fight him twice. What do I give a damn what Matt Mitrione thinks? He can bring himself and Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader walking around like he's some kind of an ape. I'll treat him like an ape. I'll sit in the crowd tomorrow night and throw bananas at him.
What was your expectation when they booked this fight? I know you say you don't sell fights, but there is some build leading up to it. Did you expect Fedor to just be this dismissive, this not willing to give any answers, not really willing to say much of anything at all?
Yeah, because I've seen him do it before, and it seems to work. He shows up in a language that nobody can understand, in a T-shirt that nobody can read. And somehow that gets over. And I wouldn't encourage any young fighter to copy that example unless you want to have a short career and no money and bad memories when it's over. I would encourage you to find another guy and take his paradigm. But it seems to work for him. And I'm not really saying this to be the skunk at the garden party as much as just point out to it, look, he figured something out. Lesnar in many parts is the same way. There's a mystique around him that just happens to work, and less is more. And if he opens his mouth, he runs the risk of ruining the mystique. So it's still a marketing angle, it's still a gimmick, and people can choose to believe that he's the world's nicest guy, and he might be, but he might not. You don't know him, and neither do I.
Do you believe that he hasn't watched the Khabib thing, all the brawl, or do you think he's just kind of declining to comment because he maybe doesn't want to ruffle feathers back home?
He's a nerd, man. I don't know what nerds do. I satisfy the other end of the market. The cool kids come watch Chael fight. I don't have any idea. He's walking around. He's holding the King James. Keep that stuff private. I don't know. Who cares if he watched it or he didn't watch it? Who gives a damn if he watched it?
Well, you watched it. Did you see Khabib's ultimatum that he posted today saying, if the UFC releases his teammates, he's going to walk, or, he wants to be released, or whatever that actually meant?
No, I didn't see that, but that adds a piece of drama to it. Wow, that's fun. He said that?
Yeah, he said if you cut Zabura, if you cut these guys, I'm gone. These are my brothers. I'm loyal to them. So it's either all of us or none of us.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't see that, but my initial thoughts is I will sit back and see how this plays out. That sounds juicy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're a couple days away. What's your weight right now? Do you know?
I don't know, but in the 220s. Yeah, 223, 224 is probably a good guess.
And you mentioned Matt Mitrione earlier. I spoke with him yesterday. He said if it ends up being you versus Bader in the final, it discredits Bellator's heavyweight division completely. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it discredits all the heavyweights completely. The best thing to do with heavyweights is to keep them a hell from any other weight class. They're the worst athletes in the room. They're the slowest guys in the room. They're the laziest guys in the room, which is why they weigh so goddamn much. And if you want to keep the mystique going on through the public that size matters and the big guys are better just because they're bigger, if you want to keep that false narrative out there, keep us real athletes away from the heavyweights. I think it was a risky move. They tried it on the other side of the tracks too, and a light heavyweight now has that strap too. Yeah, heavyweights suck. Mitrione is right.
All right, there you go. Getting the news up there, the feel on the ground from out there, Bellator land, back-to-back events, man. Pretty impressive stuff. Not the first time or the last time I should say they'll be doing that this year. They've got a couple other opportunities planned, including back-to-back events in Honolulu, Hawaii. Man, I am anxious to get the December travel assignments, man. I'll tell you that right now. Because December 15th, good Lord, I'm assuming I will be on the road on December 15th, and I will either be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for UFC on Fox 31, which let me say right now, Kevin Lee versus Ally Quinta is a phenomenal fight, and Milwaukee is actually a cool town, man. It is. But I don't know about it in December. I've only been there during the summertime, man, and it was all right. I don't know about Milwaukee in December. So we'll either be covering UFC on Fox 31 in Milwaukee or the back-to-back Bellator events in Honolulu, Hawaii. And I can tell you which one I want to be at. Ultimately, I guess it's up to Simon Samana to decide who goes where, and of course our corporate overlords over at USA Today. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm hoping I'll be in Hawaii for that. I don't think I'll be the only media member saying that. So back-to-back events this week. Of course, we'll find out who is in the Grand Prix finals. Got a couple other big fights there as well. PFL as well on Saturday night. Man, you know, I've enjoyed PFL. I really have. I think the concept has been phenomenal, man. I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. Just seeing the standings and how it worked out, and now you got the playoffs. But this is rough for them, man. They get to their playoffs, and the first week is Conor and Khabib, and then the second week is these back-to-back Bellator events. So of course, they're getting a ton of media there. And of course, you know, a lot of people paying attention. But, you know, who knows? Maybe people tune in. I'll have two different TVs going. That's for sure. They're right at the same time too. The main cards of PFL 9 and Bellator 208 are exactly the same time. So kind of unfortunate for PFL because I do think they've got a good thing going, and I do think that once they write those $1 million checks, you know, I think they're going to get a lot of attention there as well. So anyway. Yeah, definitely excited for those. Definitely will be watching PFL as well. And then next week will be a little bit lighter week. The PFL will have the evening of Saturday night all to itself for PFL 10. That morning there will be a Cage Warriors show. The day before there's an LFA and a Fight Nights Global as well. So something I noticed this week, by the way, just as a service. Now I don't know if this is everywhere because I don't know how the regional restrictions work, but DAZN in the United States. If you signed up for DAZN for Bellator, they're adding it more MMA. They've added Combate Americas, and I think the Combate Americas actually debuted right before Bellator did. So Combate Americas is on there. KSW is on there, which KSW used to be a pay-per-view for American fans. KSW is fun. It's a throwback to Pride, man. I mean, they admit, you know, basically they were huge fans of Pride, and they were like, why can't we do something like that? So it is massive, over the top. They've got that. They've got EFC from Africa, which has been a top African promotion for a long time. And the other day, I saw a Fight Nights Global logo on there. And then I went back to check it later, and it was gone. So I don't know if it was premature. Maybe there's a deal that's not quite inked yet. But Fight Nights Global, you know, they were kind of building some momentum, and then they had some issues with some of their financial backing, and you know, they kind of disappeared for a little bit. But they're starting to get going again, and I love it, man. If they're gonna get on DAZN, I mean, listen, you know, the amount of streaming services we have now is getting a little excessive. But you know, if we can collect a whole bunch of MMA promotions and put them under one roof and one price, I'm down for that. You know, we got one championship streaming for free now. So, you know, I dig that. I think that's good stuff. I don't know how many streaming services we can all afford, but I dig that. So something worth checking on DAZN. Again, I don't know if it works everywhere, if that's just the United States or what. So anyway, listen, like I said, we'll be on vacation next week. I'm going to be working this weekend, Friday and Saturday night, and then as soon as Bellator 208 is over, I am off for a week. That doesn't mean there won't be a road show. I'll still get together with my man Cold Coffee. We will have some content for you. I did find out Daniel Cormier is going to be in Vegas. That'll be next Friday. They're going to do a media day next Friday in Las Vegas, the 19th. That would be. So won't have that on the road show, but just an idea that we're going to have some content coming your way. So anyway, listen. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and apologies again for no and a half. That was terrible. That's the worst one I've ever done. Apologies for no and a half. But hopefully you understand. And what a crazy week it was at UFC 229. It's still going on. And of course, we'll have that. We'll have coverage of that as it goes on as well. In the meantime, I'm gonna go say hello to this wife and kid again. Gotta try to be a responsible family man. As long as I'm home in Las Vegas for a while, might as well do the right thing. So, thanks for listening.